Well, at the beginning of the show, we told you that the bridge behind us here on Treasure Island was made of Chinese steel. In fact, we talk a lot on the show about China's impact on the U.S. and more specifically, how it's happening. The symptoms, of course, job loss, unfair trade, the catalyst for much of that. Oil prices are determined largely by China's variable demand as much as it is ours. If we talk about the currency plenty, China looms so large over our long-term plans that a recent poll showed that more than 6 in 10 Americans are viewing China's rise as a threat to U.S. economic security. But could they also be our greatest economic ally? The truth is, China is not our enemy, and its emergence doesn't necessarily spell doom to the U.S. as a world leader. In order for both nations to continue to thrive, we have to figure out a way to work with each other, not against one another. Remember our theme of ruthlessness and compassion. That is the only way to resolve something as complex as this. And I want to bring in two men that understand both the fragility and the importance of our relationships with China. From the Financial Times, former Beijing bureau chief and current Washington bureau chief Richard McGregor, and the former president of Intel China, Jim Jarrett, with us here in San Francisco. He is now working for a program supporting innovation and collaboration between the U.S. And China, and it is a pleasure to welcome both of you. You talked, Jim, about the economic interdependence of the U.S. and China, how they need us and we need them. We just went through that with the Connect the Dots. How do we push more of the conversation to resolving through our mutual interdependence as opposed to the sort of false optics of demonization?
Well, it is a very close working relationship that we have with China, and it's growing. I mean, we're their biggest export market. They're among our biggest export markets. So we both have a lot to gain and a lot to lose from this relationship. So, I look at it as playing kind of offense and defense. And the defense is making sure that China is living up to its commitments as a trading partner. And the offense is doing what we need to do and should be doing anyway to grow jobs in the United States so that we're an effective competitor in the world.
Richard, it is easy to sit, on the bully pulpit and complain about currency rigging or complain about the tax strategy, and mathematically it may well be correct, but it is also clear, much as it is with mispricing in the energy markets or restructuring in healthcare and other tax codes, that only not only a well thought out but a sophisticated approach that realizes that correcting this is a delicate act. Walk us through sort of the dangers of reckless engagement to confront China and what you would navigate, or how you would recommend we navigate it without ignoring the problems that come up along the way.
Well, there's the old phrase, Dylan, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. And in some ways, China is the classic frenemy. You say China might become the US's biggest partner. I think economically it already is. And into the future, and more importantly, I think it's going to be a great geopolitical competitor to the US in the Asia-Pacific region. And having an economic anchor to that relationship, and interdependence, and knowledge of each other, is what is going to stop that sort of geopolitical rivalry, military rivalry, going off the rails. A couple of points. I'm going to disagree with you, I think, on one point. I think the currency it's not a non-issue, but it's really a wrong issue to focus on. There's many ways that China intervenes in its economy, and the currency is a relatively minor one, and it's appreciated a fair bit. I mean, you had a very interesting thing in your report earlier about the Plaza Accord overseen by President Reagan, where the Japanese just about doubled the value of their currency. And guess what? The US still has a trade deficit with Japan. I mean, so don't focus on the currency. There's a lot of much tougher issues that the two countries have to grapple with.
So where would you steer us again, and how would you suggest we engage with China through your lens, having spent the time that you have in Beijing, in a way that we can balance the trading environment such that we are getting a more balanced flow of capital into our own country, as opposed to the capital losses that America is currently incurring?
I think the biggest distorting factor in the Chinese economy is the dominance of the state and the state sector. the way the state sector, the government, the Communist Party favours state companies, favours state entrepreneurs and also more recently private entrepreneurs. I think the US has to chip away at trying to unlock that relationship. I also think the US has to sort of marshal, not in a threatening way, not in a way that threatens or attempts to contain China. You've got to marshal your allies, you know, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Europe, many of whom have exactly the same trade problems everybody has problems with China, just like the US does. And so to get some sort of united action against China or a united effort to persuade China in various sectors in which they are distorting the world economy, I think that's the way to go. But I'll tell you, in China, the Chinese leaders don't wake up in the morning worried about what's happening in Congress. They're worried about what's happening in their own country. So the US shouldn't overstate its influence.
Yeah, and again, obviously the biggest issue in China is employment. They have a tremendous population, a tremendous, much younger population than many other nations in the world, and obviously a significant concern that a high level of unemployment would lead to significant political instability. Jim, you mentioned the dumping issues, and Richard just pointed to the issue of the state. There may be no better example recently of that than China's subsidy of solar development, to the point where they have legitimately made it virtually impossible for the world to compete with them on solar by virtue of their intense subsidy, and some would say dumping, into the solar marketplace. Give us your sense of how significant a role the state is playing in distorting the price of things for those who are trying to compete in the open marketplace.
Well, in solar panels, the Chinese have gone from single-digit market share to half of the market in the last few years, and that didn't happen without help. And it was a function of subsidies from the Chinese government and being able to sell below cost. So I think we're seeing actions being taken, and those can be useful. We did the same thing with chips against Japan in the 80s, and the anti-dumping case there really helped to save the American chip industry, which was headed toward extinction. So this is a good thing to happen.
Well, I'm going to leave this here just because I'm out of time. But Richard, I love where you've pointed us to the idea of really advocating a global coalition around some of these core issues, and would love to have both of you back to discuss this, specifically whether there are anti-dumping lawsuits that could be filed in a way that would prevent what Intel and everybody else almost suffered in the chip industry, that we are seeing our own industry suffer right now with solar. So thank you for teaching us, and thank you for being with us. Jim Jarrett, thank you very much. Richard, thank you.